All right, this is video number 1 for our continuing learning, and we are going to start with converting fractions to decimals. Fractions to decimals. I'm going to move this a little bit to the side so it doesn't bounce every time I write. Okay, so if you do not have your notebook with you, that's fine. You can take notes on a piece of notebook paper, or you can follow along with us. I do think that there is some benefit in writing down while you're watching the video, but again, if you don't have the ability to copy into your notebook or paper available at this moment, we can always go back and fill in some information. But we're just going to kind of try our best to stick to our normal, just because that's what we're used to in math class. So today we're doing, or this lesson is about converting fractions to decimals. So I'm going to go to my page in my notebook. And as you are working online while you're taking notes, I know this is a little bit different than what we're normally used to. So remember, you can always pause the video and come back when you need to. If you need to pause to get caught up, that's totally fine too. But this is page 77. Some students also find it beneficial to turn on the closed captioning. It's not perfect, but closed captioning can help you also see kind of what's going on the video and helps you follow along. So converting means changing. So we are going to be converting fractions to decimals. And when we are converting fractions to decimals, we've done a lot of this already throughout the school year when we were working on our math games assignment for first semester. We did a lot of work with that, but you will need a calculator. If you have a scientific calculator, fantastic. If not, I will show you how to access it on your phone calculator. So I have my phone here and my calculator. So I'm going to have my calculator app, and I have a real calculator, your choice. So let's just start out really quickly by reviewing parts of a fraction. So a fraction is made up of different parts, and there are actually also different types of fractions. So in a fraction, let's go with the fraction this. In this fraction is made up of different parts. So I have this 3 is called the whole number. That's how many whole pieces there are in this fraction. In this fraction, the number 1 in this case, or any value, but where it's located, that's called the numerator. Right? It's the top number of a fraction, and it's the part. So it's the piece of a value that's less than the whole number, right? It's less than 1. So it is the part. And then we also have this bottom number, which is called the denominator. And the denominator is the whole that's broken up. So it's the whole that is broken up, right? So we have 3 whole pieces over here, and instead of having a 4th whole piece, we actually have 1/2 of a piece, meaning we have 1 piece, 1 part, out of 2 pieces. It's whole broken up, right? So basic reminders of what a fraction is. And so we're going to talk now how to convert or change, because convert means change, fractions to decimals. So when we are converting or changing our fractions to decimals, that's where some of these are going to be easy. They are things that we can just do mental math because they're fractions that we convert to decimals all the time in the real world. The other part is are a little bit harder, the other types of fractions. So that's where a calculator is going to come in handy. So step number 1 is to divide the numerator. What was the numerator again? Oh, up here. The numerator is the top number. So we're going to take the top number, divide the numerator by the denominator. And what was the denominator? The bottom number. So maybe we'll put here in parentheses, top number divided by bottom number. We want to try to use numerator and denominator in our discussion, but that's okay. If we need a little reminder, perfect. We're going to take the top number and we're going to divide it by the bottom number. Numerator divided by denominator. And sometimes we're done because sometimes you just have a fraction that has nothing else. It only is made up of a numerator and a denominator. But other times, so I'm going to put a little star next to it, other times we're going to have some extra steps. So if there is a whole number, if there's a whole number, so in this fraction up here in my example, there is a whole number. Maybe your fraction just looked like this, and there is no whole number, so I can skip this. But if there is a whole number, replace the 0, and it's going to be to the left of the decimal, with this number. So when we divide our numerator by our denominator, numerator divided by denominator, we'll get a decimal answer. And that decimal answer is going to have a 0 in front of it. Or it might not have a 0. It might be an improper fraction, and then we're done. But since this fraction has a whole number, I would get 1 divided by 2, numerator divided by denominator, and I would get something with a 0 in front of it. And then I'm going to take that 0, which is going to be to the left of the decimal. I'm going to take that 0 away, and I'm going to replace it, for this example, with the number 3. Another thing that might happen sometimes when you are converting fractions to decimals, might not happen, so you could skip it. It might, so if the decimal repeats a pattern, it has to have a pattern that repeats. It can't just randomly repeat the number 2. It has to repeat, and it has to have a pattern that repeats over and over and over again. So if the decimal repeats a pattern, write using bar notation. And what that means by write using bar notation, you write the repeating pattern one time. And then you draw a line, which is the bar, above the pattern. And we'll do some practice with this now. So grab your calculator, whichever one you're going to use. And I'm going to do -1/2. I will do the fraction 4/3. We will do the fraction 7 8/15. We will do the fraction 1/3. We will do the fraction 7/9. We're going to do 4 3/4. And we will do what else can we do? Let's do 1/7. Oops, that's not a 7. This is a 7. 1/7. And let's do -2 and 4/6. And let's do 18/3. All right, so here we go. On a calculator, if you have this calculator, remember our negative button is down here. So I'm going to type in, divide the numerator by the denominator. So I would do -1 divided by 2. -1 divided by 2. Press enter, and there's my decimal value. So this is how you do it on a scientific calculator. I'm going to switch over to the phone calculator because I think that's going to be more of what we have. So my negative button is right here. I'm going to do 1, and then I'm going to press the negative sign to make the negative show up. Divided by 2, and there's my decimal value. So I am going to say that the decimal conversion, the equivalent decimal value, is -0.5. Let's move on. 4 divided by 3, because numerator divided by denominator. And this one is step 3. It has a repeating pattern. If I look, the 3 repeats the whole time. So I'm going to write down 1 point, and then my directions say, write the repeating pattern 1 time. Well, the 3 repeats, so I just write the 3 once. And then I draw a line over the bar, right? The bar above the pattern. Sometimes you'll also see this written, dot, dot, dot. It means this dot, dot, dot means that it continues, that there's more information. We're just not going to write it down. All right, let's keep going. So 7 8/15. I still start out with numerator divided by denominator. So I'm going to do 8 divided by 15. But my step 2 says if there's a whole number, which there is, replace the 0 to the left of the decimal with this number. So instead of 0.5333333, I'm going to write 7 because I have a whole number of 7. 0.5, and then I have a 3 that is my repeating pattern. So this fraction involved all of them. So I'm going to write the 3 once because only the 3 is repeating, and draw a line just over the 3. Uh-oh, we might have a visitor on our first video. All right, here we go. Next, we have 1/3. So I'm going to take 1 divided by 3. So 0.3, and since the 3 is repeating, I'll draw my line just over my 3. We have 7/9. Hi, Sundance. 7/9, which we will do numerator divided by denominator, 7 divided by 9. Now let's talk about this one. So we look here and we say, oh wait, it kind of repeats, but then I see this 8 at the end. This 8 at the end is actually your calculator rounding. So the calculator, because if I took that off and I asked you to round, well, a 7 tells you to round the previous place value up 1. So that 7 would round it up to 8. So that's what's happening right here. So if you get a repeating pattern where it's repeating a whole lot, and then all of a sudden there's this one random guy over here that doesn't quite fit, we will just ignore that last place value. So in this situation, the 7 is repeating. We're ignoring that last place value because that's my calculator rounding. All right, over here we have numerator divided by denominator, so 3 divided by 4. And there is a whole number. It's actually an integer because it's negative, but there's a number in front of it. There are whole values. So I'm going to replace the 0 with that whole number. So it will be negative 4.75. We now have 1/7 as our next fraction. So 1 numerator divided by 7 denominator. And here's this first instance that we don't really know what this is looking like. It looks like it could possibly keep going, right? 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7, 1, 4. Maybe it keeps going to 2, 8, 5, 7, right? So you can make that guess. Or another way of doing that is just to write 1, 4, 2, 8, dot, dot, dot. Now, I will say, we know that it is a repeating value right there, but that's okay. Like in this point, we're just learning how to experiment with our calculator and learning this conversion process. And so putting those dot, dot, dots is an acceptable moment when we are unsure of if this pattern is truly continuing, what that looks like. Or maybe, this is the pattern and then it repeats. We're not quite sure of what that looks like because my screen is just so small and limited. But it is okay when you have something like this that is really truly a big value that doesn't have a repeating process right away to write it with these 3 dots afterwards. We're going to continue here. Numerator divided by denominator, 4 divided by 6. And again, this is one of those fractions where I look and I see, oh, it's repeating. Uh-oh, what happened here? And again, because my values are greater than 5 or more, right? You round that place value up. So my calculator is rounding up, so I'm going to cover that up and not pay attention to that last place value. I look at my fraction also, and there is a whole value in front. So instead of the 0, I'm going to replace it with a -2. Put my decimal, and it's repeating the value of 6. Last but not least, last one, numerator divided by denominator. And this actually just works out perfectly to a whole number. There's no decimal at all. So that is the video for converting fractions to decimals. This is lesson 1 of our continuous learning through Hawker Grove, and we will have a few more videos in this unit that we're going to go over. So again, video 1, I hope you guys have a great day.